Hey everyone, and welcome back to Fabric Frenzy. Glad to see you all, and hope you've had a fantastic summer like I have myself. Fabric Frenzy, the monthly show that will host news, spotlights, features, tip of the month, and much more around Microsoft Fabric. So let's dive into it. Today we have, if you ask me, a very special spotlight, which is the new Lakehouse for Fabric. And when I say new, I need to put a little emphasis on it because it's not really new, but we got a new version, maybe a 2.0, maybe a final something version. But at least we got a new version of the Lakehouse that we can preview. So for anyone new tuning in, very quickly, Fabric is of course the unified platform where we can do everything with our data. We can fetch that data from our sources, prepare it, transform it, make it look just the way we want it to look, make it just the usefulness that we want it to be. And finally, of course, you then use that data with tools like Power BI, Data Activator, and more. And at the bottom of all of this is, of course, the heart of Fabric, One Lake, the modern data lake that will host all the data from all these other workflows in Fabric. So what's new in Fabric? I brought today 6 news that I think is worth talking about. So there is the new AI skills that are released for public preview. We have GitHub integration for our source control and a few other source control features. Then there is new little addition to MS Spark Utils, where we can now see runtime context. We have, of course, the new Lakehouse with the Lakehouse schema, capacity pools for our capacities, and finally, a new DAX query view for Power BI with new features added. So a lot of fantastic features to dive into. First of it is something that I have personally been looking very much forward to. So it's the GitHub integration for source control. It's a possibility to now not just host our code in Azure DevOps, but actually integrate Fabric with GitHub and have that work as our code repository with all that entails. We also have some extra features released, which is possibility to branching out your development workflows. So we can now branch out to individual feature workspaces and develop in an isolated environment away from our main environment. And once we're happy with the changes that were made, we can then merge that into the main branch. On top of that, we have features for exploring those branches. So if we have a team of 4, 5, 6 developers, each of them could have their own branch, or they could collaborate on feature branches, while we'll still remain and keep an overview of what branches are created around a particular deployment pipeline or a particular workspace. So really moving us towards a more mature enterprise ready setup around our code management. Secondly, we have the AI skill, which I think is a fantastic feature. Because I can't remember how many times I've been asked, how do we utilize AI? How do we utilize something like ChatGPT? How do we utilize your OpenAI? How do we use this together with Fabric? And until so far, there has been a bunch of features in Fabric that will help accelerate our work. We have the Copilot for Power BI, we have the Copilot for notebooks, Copilot for data warehouse, Copilot in many places where, as a developer, we can really benefit from getting that input from AI when we do our development. But we have not seen so many features that enabled us to build actual solutions for end users using these technologies. Sure, we could do this ourselves by coding it inside a notebook, or by making our own custom workflow, calling the APIs of these AI LLMs. But now we have a feature that's dedicated to help us do this work and do it in a self-service manner, out of the box with point and click, and not having to do actual coding yourself. So this feature is called AI skill. And as you can see from the image here, is a pretty simple UX where you can just go and select your objects from your data artifact, like your dimensions and your facts, and then you can create a kind of an artifact based on this. So we can choose these objects, and then we have the possibility to then ask questions as a chatbot and get answers based on this data. So that means that I can now go from having data unified in Fabric to building an AI that works on this data, which means that suddenly the AI will not hallucinate anymore. It will actually be contextualized around the facts of our data. It can query our data, and that means when the user is asking it questions, it won't guess anymore, but it would actually query our data and come up with factual answers based on this data. So it's very, very neat, and it also is opening up for something called publishing it as an API. So once you've built this AI skill around some of your data, let's say you want to share your customer loyalty data with your sales team. You just go to your Fabric platform and you click your customer loyalty data artifacts. Then you publish this as an AI skill, and suddenly they have a chatbot they can ask about and say, hey, for customer X, what kind of loyalty are we looking at? And even more so, we can publish it as an API and can use it programmatically in our own development. It could be part of our ERP system or sales outreach systems, or is similar. So it's pretty much within reach to start thinking of scenarios like a salesperson going to their sales system, having a co-pilot that can ask questions like, hey, which of my customers should I be attentive about around the customer loyalty? And the co-pilot, using this AI skill, can go down and look at the actual data and come back and say, hey, these 5 customers have a significantly reduced loyalty since the last few months. So this is a really great way to utilize our data and enable it with AI. On top of that, we also have an addition to the MS Spark utils runtime. Sorry, the MS Spark utils, which is a new function that will give us runtime context. And this may seem like a small thing, being able to import this MS Spark util, run it, and then how we do it here in a notebook is just to write out MS Spark util .runtime.context, and that's it. Once we run this, we'll get information about the notebook. Which notebook is running, what workspace is it in, what default lakehouse has it, does it have attached, and much, much more. And this seems like a little thing, but it actually enables a lot of workflows around handling the notebooks dynamically, having the notebooks understand what context they are in, and make it much more flexible on how we use it across big complex scenarios. So pretty neat addition. Then we also have capacity pools. And capacity pools is, instead of having a dedicated Spark pool for our individual workspace, now we can create pools that will work across our entire capacity. So that means across multiple workspaces, we can define a specific capacity setting, going up until the burst limit of what our capacity can handle regarding Spark. So we can predefine this at administrators and let the users then use those. And the way we do it is, of course, just create this pool, and then whoever is managing a workspace will then see this pool inside the workspace settings of their own, within the capacity, within the tenant. When they go to the settings, it will just be there, and the users can start use this pool in their workflows. Great. And then we have the DAX query view. So I've really looked forward to showing this feature, and I'm also honest with you guys here. I'm also a little nervous because it's based on Copilot, and Copilot is amazing. But just this morning, I had a problem with the demo. It didn't work. So we'll look at the slides if we have to, but let's try to dig in and look at what this feature can do for us inside Power BI directly. So the DAX query view is I have Power BI open here. So regular, good old Power BI. I loaded in a standard AdventureWorks data model, pretty classic, a sales order dimension, a sales order fact, a sales order header, customer dimension, product dimension, and some extra tables. Pretty basic, not transformed a lot from what you can download as a sample data set. The new thing is here that I can start investigating and drilling through and exploring the data of my data model without having to start build out my visuals right off the get-go. So for example here, I can start with this blank page here of just writing my own code. And I could write out something like this. I just want to do a simple summarize column where I want to summarize across company names and this order quantity column. So I calculate and a sum, so the sum of this order quantity column. And then I can run this query and get the results. So that means I can start querying my data and kind of understand it a little bit more. That's neat if you are proficient with writing raw DAX, the query form of DAX, and not just creating meshes. But if you aren't, and if this is new to you, don't be scared, because there are still plenty of features here that we can use, and the UI will help us. So we can go and actually select an object. And instead of writing our own code, we can actually go and say, well, I'm interested in this product table. I can do a quick query here and make it give me just the top 100. And immediately it just writes the query, of course. I could also go and add some column statistics from the table. So here I can see all the columns. I can see count, distinct values. I can see min, max, median, mean. A lot of column statistics that I get here from being helped by the UI. Furthermore, let's say I have some particular query in mind that I want to run. I could also actually just go and create a visual. For example, company name. Let's do something else. Product name, product color. And I want to see this compared to the order quantity. And once I have the visual, I can use the performance analyzer, run this visual. And whereas before we've always been able to see and copy this query of the performance analyzer, now we are actually also able to run this query in the DAX query view. So when I click here, immediately the whole query is copied here and it's run, so we can see how it looks. So pretty neat way of exploring your queries. And if you have a visual with a specific long-running calculation, or it's very slow or something like that, well, then suddenly you can use not just the performance analyzer to find out how much time it takes, and whether it's a direct query or if it's a DAX query that takes the time. You can actually now also dig into the query, see it fleshed out here in the DAX query editor. You can run it. You can try to troubleshoot what is actually causing this query to run so slow that it is. So it's a nice way of exploring your visual queries. Finally, and if you ask me, most interestingly here, is that we also have a Copilot helper. So instead of having to code anything, I could just have, if it works, we're crossing our fingers here, I could just have asked it here, please query. I probably don't have to say please, but it cannot hurt to be nice to the robots of the future. Please, dear robot, please query product color over sales amount. And let's see if we can. I need to click the Copilot. Hopefully it will help us out here. There you go. I can decide to keep this query and I can run the query. And as you see here, it actually gave me what I asked for. So that's pretty neat so far, but there's more. What if I, instead of asking me to just define a specific query, instead I ask it to help me create a bunch of sales meshes relevant for this data model? Can it actually do work for me? Can it actually help me develop and enhance my data model? That is the question. And it's working. And it seems a little bit slow to have to sit here and wait for the nice Copilot to do the work for us. But I can promise you that if it actually works here, it will be able to write meshes far quicker than I probably could have done in the same time. It is just feeling a little bit annoying to sit and wait for it. And there it is. So actually we don't see it here because it's zoomed in a little bit, but if I scroll up here, you can see it actually here is defining a whole lot of new measures for our data model. So that's pretty cool. And I can actually keep this and I can run it and I can see how these measures will look like. So I can check here, for example, the new measure: total sales amount, total quantity sold, average sales amount, total orders, average order amount, total customers, products, categories, so far. And it's calculating all these different things. So that's pretty neat. I mean, it's giving me some high level data here. So what is really, really cool is that it doesn't just create these definitions and then let me copy paste these afterwards. It actually creates the code that I can go up here and say update model with changes. And if I click there, I can now update the model. And it's working again for a few seconds. And what you will see now is that the model across many of the tables have been updated now with measures. So the average order quantity, average sales amount, quantity sold, sales amount. Where else? In this one maybe? Average order amount, and so forth. So all these 14 measures was now not just the code was written for me, but I could also just click one button and it actually implemented the measures inside the model. I think that is really cool. Of course, it's a limited use case and it won't do all your very advanced measures and they may not do it efficiently, but it's such a neat tool to get started. And it really will help you elevate that first iteration of the data model you're working at. And this was very generic measures. I could also have asked it for a very, very specific implementation of give me last year comparison compared to 2 years ago and the ratio between those numbers. I could also have asked that and have it write that measure for me. So really, really nice addition. Applaud from here. I think we're really going I think we're really starting to see some of the benefits with Copilot with features like this. So good job, Microsoft. That was the query view. And apart from all the options I showed you and what you can do here, a new addition to the query view is also that we're now able to use the query view also on direct connection to data models inside the Power BI service. So we don't have to work on a local model anymore to make this work. Overall, great addition, great summer edition from Microsoft with this query view. Then I want to move on because I have one last feature I want to talk about, which is the spotlight of today. It is, of course, the new Lakehouse. I was personally very excited about this edition, and once I started digging into the details, I became more and more excited, and that was until I started hitting the limitations of the feature. But with no further ado, let's showcase what we can do with this new Lakehouse, and let's showcase why I believe it's not ready for production workflows yet, although being a very interesting feature. Let's dive in. Hold on. Great. My screen is ready. So we have here our workspace. And in this workspace, I can create an object like I've always been able to do. So I'm creating this new item here, and I'm creating specifically a new Lakehouse. So when I say a new lakehouse, it's not actually a new type of lakehouse. It's not a new artifact or anything. It's a new version of the lakehouse we already know. It's the same way of creating it. I can create it and I can give it a name like Fabric Frenzy or something like that. And the way I switch to this new format is by clicking this button for Lakehouse Schema, this public preview button. And the moment I click this, it seems like a little thing, and it seems like it's just adding this new feature to our lakehouse. But you should be aware that you're actually creating a different kind of lakehouse, which potentially can have backwards compatibility issues with the notebooks or the things that you've developed beforehand. And it as of today has some pretty groundbreaking limitations that will make it almost unworkable to use in production scenarios. But still fine to test it out. And Microsoft is being open about this being a preview feature, so don't tell us they didn't warn us. But yeah, let's create it. Fabric Frenzy with this new lakehouse schema. And it's creating the lakehouse. We get a blank lakehouse as usual. And the big change now is, of course, that we have this DBO schema symbol icon within our tables folder. And I can go here, I can check it out. There's not so much interesting about this because this is the default schema. Oh, interesting. But what is interesting here is I can create a new schema. So I can go here and create a schema that is made for maybe sales specific data. It could also be a schema that was specific for a specific country, like Denmark. Or it could even be schemas that are supposed to divide our lakehouse into different layers, like creating a raw, creating a clean, and creating a curated schema for our lakehouse. And suddenly we can structure a lakehouse or different schemas within one lakehouse instead of having to create multiple lakehouse. So that is what we could do if it was working with full functionality. What it neat is here that I already loaded in some data in one of these schema lakehouses. So as you can see here, I have some data tables across two different schemas. I have the dim customer in one, and I have the adventure works in another. So that means I can now work with data in two different schemas. And what I also find to be a cool feature here is that I can go and add not just a new schema, but I can add something called a new schema shortcut. It works just like a regular shortcut in the lakehouse, except that it will target more than one object. So now if I'm connecting to some other lakehouse here, and it has a bunch of tables, like this other schema, which has so many tables here, instead of clicking a specific table, I can now click the whole schema and make a shortcut for that whole thing. And that means within few seconds, I actually now mounted a whole other subsection of a different lakehouse with all of these data available for me to start using. So that is pretty cool. So if we look at the feature description for a bit, we can see it has this new logical grouping. We can now organize and structure our data within the lakehouse using schemas to do so. So there's the logical grouping and we have the schema shortcuts. But if we look at the released features, there's also, as you can see on the slide here, there's also mentioned that there should be security policies and the ability to cross-reference table from different workspaces. And especially the last one, actually both of them were some of the features that I was so excited about digging into because those are really powerful. So first of all, the cross workspace querying basically means that lakehouses is not a limitation anymore. I can go and write a query that goes to one workspace, to one specific lakehouse, to one specific schema, picks a single table, and then I can join it with a table from some completely different workspace, completely different lakehouse, completely different schema, and then use a query that actually combines these two and gives me the insight, the combined insights of those two tables that were otherwise disconnected, which means that suddenly I have the full availability of the whole Fabric platform in my power when I'm writing queries. Or at least that was the promise of the feature. Because unfortunately, when I actually tried this out in real life and run some sort of cross query here on the lakehouse, you can actually see it just gives an error. And it even gives this error if I want to do the simplest query in the world, which is just a select star from a single table inside the default lakehouse that I just created. Gives the same error. You don't have to wait for this starting up. It gives the same error, which means that the SQL endpoint is not working for the new lakehouses yet. And this is a known limitation, Microsoft also being open about it. This also means that if we're connecting from Power BI to the same lakehouse, actually we can try it out. Let's open a new report, connect to this lakehouse from Power BI, and you will see very quickly that that it's a little hard to use. So I'm connecting here to the lakehouse, and I'm connecting to the schema lakehouse, and I want to connect to the SQL endpoint to not connect to the default data model, and it will actually establish the connection. But all that it will show me is system tables. So I don't actually have access to my data from Power BI because Power BI is using the SQL endpoint. Notebooks is also using the SQL endpoint when you're using Spark SQL. So the promise of cross workspace querying seems to be within reach and close. And I think the underlying technology seems to be there. But right now there is a problem with the SQL endpoint preventing us to use this. But worse, it's preventing us from actually using the feature as a whole. So that was one of the big limitations. Secondly, on the feature list was security policies. So the ability to create different security policies for the different schemas. And I thought that was neat as well. And I tried to look around in the UI for something that would help me set up this kind of security policy. And I couldn't find anything in the UI that would help me do so. So and I even looked at the documentation for the new Lakehouse format, and also it didn't mention any security policies there. So what actual feature was released, I am not actually sure here. But even contrary, I found out that if we look at some of the traditional lakehouses, so this is a one created without the schema, it has the manage one lake data access button. Granted it's preview, but it has this data access management UI. And if I go to the new one, it's completely gone. So something is still lacking. And if you ask me, it's two of the most essential features to actually work with the Lakehouse. Once we get those features though, I see this as an incredible powerful addition that I just can't help wait to explore some more. But personally, I'm going to wait out until these two major issues have been fixed. Finally, time is running. Before we go to the last tip of the day, I do want to point you towards some of the great conferences that are happening here in September and October, and also in February. So we have Power BI Next Step in Denmark, fantastic conference, Power BI specific, not so much a Fabric conference, but Power BI is part of Fabric. Then we have, of course, the big Fabric European Microsoft Fabric Community Conference in Stockholm, September 24 to 27. I will be there in person. We'll bring a camera. I'll tune in to the broadcast next month, and I will sure to give you the news from this conference immediately on spot while being there. Great conferences overall. And in the last 30 seconds, I'll show you the tip of the month, which is that you can actually refresh a single table in a Power BI data model using something as simple as the semantic link library in a notebook. So how does that look in practice? Quite simple, actually. Simple enough to run it in just hopefully 10 seconds. I have a data model. I have a notebook. All I have to do is write import Senpai fabric, and then I can give it a designated name. I have to define my objects that I want to refresh. So in this case, this is a specific table, sales LT customer. And then the command is fabric.refresh dataset, and I write what name of the dataset is. And that's all that needs to be run. It imports the library. It makes the definitions for the objects. And then finally here we also have a list refresh request, which will just give me a statistic of did it actually run or not. So now it's imported in library. Takes a little bit more than 10 seconds, but just give us 20 seconds and we'll be there. AdventureWorks is not there, but it's right here. Oh, case sensitive. There you go. And it's running. And as you can see in the statistics, it's also case sensitive here. As you can see in the statistics, it's actually now in the moment of starting up a new refresh where it's refreshing just this one table. So that was the tip to end off the broadcast of today. I hope you enjoyed some of the content. And hope to see you next month for a blast of broadcasting from the Fabric Conference in Stockholm. See you all. Cheers.